make sure it is sustainable to a certain extent. You measure something a little different if it's not a direct service situation. It may be preservation, for example. That's not a change. It's keeping something from changing. So there's a little, I can be glad to have a little discussion on this if you'd like, but basic principle here are these are the key element of an outcome that you're looking for. So long story short, the way you define success is very, very important. Now let's take a look at an actual nonprofit. And you tell me what you think about this. The organization is the Community Resource Center. How many of y'all are familiar with them? Okay. They are the largest provider of housing and food, emergency transportation, that kind of thing in North County. Very well known for it. When I first started talking with them, they'd just gone through strategic planning. And what they were trying to decide is whether or not they should have a capital campaign to build 14 additional units of housing for folks who were suffering from domestic violence, victims of domestic violence. 14 units in a multi-million-dollar capital campaign. That's what they were trying to figure out, how do they do that. So that's where they're at. Let's take a look. Their mission was to end hunger, to end homelessness, and to break the cycle of domestic violence. What do you think? Yeah, that's all. Is it measurable? Well, no, not really. So the key question that we asked is, well, how do you know when you've succeeded? And then we also got into a very interesting conversation because they could tell me what they had succeeded about. And it really got into what business they were in and what they were excited about. It turns out that they had an 89% success ratio. With every victim of domestic violence that came, got housing from them, within 18 months they were self-sufficient. They created an action plan to change their lives, gotten their own housing, gotten employed, or whatever it took, got whatever subsidies they needed from the government, and they were self-sufficient. The folks at CRC were very excited about this. So what do you think happened as we started to ask the question, what business are you in and how do you define success? They came up with a new mission statement. Look at this one. Take those who are in need of food, protection, any sort of emergency aid, and through their own self-responsibility, creating a personal action plan and the resources CRC can provide, housing, transportation, that kind of thing, enable folks to become safe, stable, and self-sufficient. What do you think? What do you think the funders think? Kind of interesting there. So,
and that what you just pointed out is clearly measurable.
Yes, it is.
You are self-sufficient, you can measure that.
Yep. We'll take a little bit more look at the value that this created. Whoops, I'm sorry. But that was basically their new story. So they define what business they're in. Now we know what business they're in. And you can see a significant effect to the organization. But what's the next step? The next step is to define this measurably. First was define your outcome, right? The next step is define this measurably. So the key question that we asked is, what's the amount of change that you want to create in 3 years? Now, no, we're not asking what's not working right now. What are your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats? I mean, we do need to look at some of that when you determine how you're really valuable to somebody. But the key question is, what amount of change do you want to create in 3 years? Here's their 3-year impact statement. In 3 years, they want to have fed and clothed and protected 6,800 people. And of those, see 3,800 become self-sufficient in 18 months. So I'm going to ask you a little bit more, what do you think they're going to do next? Meaning, what are the key initiatives? What do you think they're not going to do now that they know they want to do this? Going to have that capital, capital, no way, 14 units? You know, the cost per unit is what, 100, 200,000? You know, if they spend $100,000 to $200,000 on one housing unit, How many people can they work with? Can they case manage? There was just no trade-off there for them. But did their business change at all, really? With the staff? No. They just got a bead on where they could have the greatest impact, and it was hugely exciting to them. Any questions on this? Comments? Okay, so let's step back before we get into the initiatives that they took. And that, yes, ma'am?
I want to know how they came up with those numbers.
Ah, now that's a great question. What's your name? Margie. And are you a board member? Are you what's your role?
I'm a board member and president of a nonprofit.
A double whammy.
I'm her executive director.
Oh, God forbid. I'm so sorry. I know that woman. And so how do you think they came up with that number? That's an excellent question. Let's say you're a board member, and you're just asked, how many people do you want to help over 3 years? What are you going to say? 10,000, right?
But that's,
How do you get to 6,800?
there's a number of a fantasy and there's a number of a reality.
Right. What are you going to say?
If somebody asks me,
No, I'm sorry. I forgot your name.
Jennifer.
Jennifer. What are you going to say, Jennifer?
Well, we've already had this conversation. Our next step in our organization, which is called Words Alive, by the way, it's a literacy organization, and I do shill for it endlessly. It's really, we need to do some kind of needs assessment to figure out, where the need lies.
Ah, okay. So the board member is going to start with what's wanted, what's dreamed. And the staff person, the person whose feet are on, who really makes it happen, is going to say what's feasible, what's reasonable.
And also, what have we done?
What is this reasonable? Can we have any evidence for this? The truth is, it's an iterative process. The key thing with what we're talking about, though, is to set your sight on the future and work backwards. Decide how you're going to get there. Now, some of that needs to marry with working forwards. For example, 6,800 people have to be fed, clothed. 3,800 people self-sufficient in 18 months. Well, there's some conversion rates there, right? And there's some supplies that have to be made. So there's relationships. If you're going to serve 6,800 people, you need a certain number of housing vouchers, food vouchers, that kind of thing. So you work both ways. But the key thing is to start with a goal to see how you can stretch to it, what you could do differently. Because the question is, where do we want to get, and what needs to change for us to get there? Not where are we now, and what should we do next? Does that help? So it is iterative, and I'll give you a few more examples as we work through this presentation to help answer that question. The way these guys did it, we worked with the staff. We divided up the target markets because we realized there are going to be different conversion rates. For example, the chronically homeless, let's not even put them in the category where they're going to become self-sufficient. Take supportive housing. And so that target market, off the screen. Now, what about the target market of the folks who currently have homes but are going to lose them? There's a bunch of subsidy money coming for that. Oh, special target market. Or the folks who are from generational poverty. A little different as far as conversion rate, meaning success rate there. So we had them divide up their target markets, figure out approximately how many people they'd served in the past there and how many they anticipated if they were to make some changes that they wanted to make. And so they worked